Hey guys, and welcome to the channel. Today I got a really special video for you. I will show you how to mount ski bindings on your skis. As you can see, that's the result right there. I've seen a lot of YouTube videos where they use these professional clamp devices where you don't have to mark the holes that you drill. I don't use these devices, so I'll make sure that everybody at home can do this on their own. I'll do it with this marker kingpin, but usually any other binding should work just fine. Okay, in this video we're just trying to figure out where our holes should be. So we want this ski to look like that one, and with this one we can just start drilling the holes. So the first thing we want to do is to find the center line of the ski. So for that I'll just use some tape. And I'll just go ahead and line it up somewhere in the middle. Of course it doesn't have to be perfectly in the middle, but just that we can draw a line here. So in the next step what we do is we measure, for example here, we measure the width of the ski and then just divide it by 2, and so we can draw a center line. For that I used this kind of tool. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but that's the tool that I want to use. But if you don't have a tool like that, 2 wooden blocks with 90-degree angles should just do fine. So like this you can do it too. Basically you just go ahead and measure here and then just measure the middle. But first of all I will show you with this one, and then I'll just show you how to do it with those. So I'll start at this recommended line. I'll take this tool and I'll just measure the width of the ski right here. And of course you should make sure that you hold it in a 90 degrees angle, because if you go sideways like this, the measurement is not right, and that's why it's pretty good to start at the recommended line, because you can just line up the tool and then you know that you got the right angle. So right here we have 95, that's how it should be, because under the foot this ski is 95 millimeters wide. The bad thing about these tools is that they don't start with 0 here, because the reading thing is somewhere on the right. So I'll just lift it up a bit, and then I'll just take this tool. I'm sorry guys, I just don't know how this is called, but you can comment in the comment section what it's called. So there we go, 95 divided by 2 should be 4.75. So I'll just go ahead and line up those two edges with 4.75 and check if it's correct. There we go, that's it. We got the center. Now make sure to hold on tight. And then I'll just grab a pen and mark the middle. So take your time with this, measure twice or even a third time, because if you mess up with this, then your whole binding won't fit right. So if you don't have this kind of tool, then you can also use 2 bricks. I got myself some wooden bricks, but it doesn't really matter. But make sure that they have a nice edge and a perfectly 90 degrees angle, and make sure that the table that you're working with is flat too. So what we are going to do is we just push these 2 bricks on each edge, and then we can just either measure the whole distance first, or we just go ahead and line up that it's the same on the right and on the left side. And make sure that you always measure in a 90-degree angle to the midline. So this looks pretty good to me. Just go ahead and bam. There we go. So now continue, I would say just do about 5 to 7 of these points, one right there, one here and so on, all the way to the back. Now we need this paper, but just the part down here. But those are the holes that you have to drill later on. And you can find all these papers for almost every binding on their powder guide site, but I'll just give you a link in the description down below. I think it is in German, but just to be said, these are not official. I think somebody made them at home, but with all the bindings I've mounted so far, these are just perfectly fine. So you can go ahead and download them, but we only need this scale down here. And we'll just... And I want it to be perfectly cut where the symbols or the lines start. There we go. And with this scale we can check if our measurements are right. So what I'm doing here is I'll take the scale and put it on here where it says midline, and now I'll just go ahead and make sure that it's a nice 90 degrees angle. And then I'll just wrap around both sides, and I'll just read down here on the edge. I will read down here on the edge how far it is from the midline. Here it says exactly 6 centimeters, and then the other side it's almost 6, but not perfectly. I think it's more like 1/4 of a millimeter, so that should be fine. But just because I want to do it super right, I'll just go ahead and draw the line a bit more on the left side. So I'll just go ahead and measure. Now it's pretty much perfect. So, and you can just go ahead and measure it all the way, like on every mark that you made. Okay, so now all these marks should be just right. That's why we have to draw the center line right now. But what I do is not just draw the line, I'll just take 2 points at a time. I line them up and draw the line between those 2 points. And what I do now is I don't switch to the next 2 points, but I go one step further to those 2. Because now you can check if these 2 lines are lining up perfectly. So what I do is I'll just match those lines here, and if they are perfectly right on the left side too, then I know that all my marks should be right. So I'll do the same down here. I won't draw between those 2 points, but I'll go one further. Okay, now you can see that we made this perfect line right there. But before I'll go to the next step, I'll measure again, and I'll measure between the points that I drew so that I know that this line is correct. Because just remember, once you drill the holes you can't go back, but now you can always start again. Okay, so now that the midline is done, we can start to make the pattern for where we have to drill afterwards. So this is the pattern as I told you before, link is in the description. And first of all you want to cut it just straight in the middle. So I'll go ahead and cut it right there. Oh, I'm messing up my table. There we go. This should be perfect. So, as I said, cut it in the middle. And now you want to cut it right here, so that this black line stops right at the cut. You want to do the same here, and of course on this paper too. because the ski is not as wide as this part, I'll also cut this part off right here too. And now there comes a really important part, because we have to put it together on the right length. So basically what you want to do is you want to find out the sole length of your ski boot. Most of the time it's written on the sole or on the side of the ski boot. So mine is 305 millimeters long, and I'll just go ahead and find it on this scale right here. So I'll just go ahead and find 305. It's really important that you look at the numbers, because here's 300 millimeters, and if you go just 1 centimeter further, you're at 320. That's because you also go the same amount of distance on the other paper, so it doubles up. So we have here 300, that's in the middle should be 310, so the small line in the middle here should be just 305. So what I'll do is align this perfectly up, and of course here it is super important that you have a nice 90 degrees angle. So make sure you get this right. Okay, that's fine, and now you just go ahead and draw the line, and you should do the same with the other part of the pattern. There we go, and now we should go to a window. With the window, it's way easier to line up the lines. So make sure that both center lines overlap correctly, and also make sure that the marks for the length of your sole are overlapping as well. So before we stick this pattern to the ski, we have to mark where on the ski we want the middle of our foot. Usually there's always a recommended line, which is right here. And this is like the sweet spot for the ski, or what the ski is meant for. But for myself, this is a bit far in the back. I'll just go like 5 to 7 millimeters in the front. But for you guys, if you don't know how it affects the ski, if you go in the front or in the back, just stick with the recommended line. You won't do anything wrong with it. It's just that I prefer to stay a little bit more in the front. I'll go 7 millimeters. In the front. Of course, you don't have to draw this line if you stick with the recommended one, because there is already a line. Take a piece of tape and just put it right on, but don't stick it down yet, because you want to make sure that it is perfect 90-degree angles between the midline and this line, and this looks like a perfect angle. So you can just go ahead and stick this down. And just a little tip for you, if you let it sit for a while, or just go maybe for a coffee or something, it could be that you don't remember if this here in the front or this in the back is where you want to mount the binding. So just go ahead and paint 2 arrows on there, because now you know that this is the line where you want to mount the ski. But you shouldn't stick this how it is on the ski, because then you would only have the 2 ends of this paper to line up with the middle line, and you don't know if this is a little bit off or not. So what I do is I'll just cut out some pieces right here, then one in the middle, and one here, and one here in the front. Because if I line those up right now, I have several points where I can check the midline. You should line up this line with the mark we made right here, because this is where the center of the binding will be. So with the center line lined up, I want to start in the front. So that I line up, oh, that was bad. So that I line up the midline and the line on this pattern. So this looks pretty good right now. Now we move along and get the midline perfect in all the cutouts we made. So just take it right here. So now, as you can see, this ski is ready to be drilled. But before you do that, you should take both skis and just check if this line right here is on the same height as on the other ski. So I would just recommend you take the skis and put them on the floor, and then you should check if these lines line up perfectly. So I'll press them together, and as you can see, those are perfect. So that's what you want to check, and if you have done all that, then you can go ahead and watch the second video, which is about drilling the ski and mounting the bindings. So that's it for part 1. If you want to see part 2, just click over there, and please subscribe right here. So at the end, I want to say that I'm not responsible for what you're doing, so if you mess up your ski, that's not my fault. That's it. Bye, guys.